Welcome to Secure with Dr. KJ. My next guest is Ilya Pozharsky, Senior Vice President of Enterprise Solutions at eShare. Ilya brings over 2 decades of experience helping enterprises secure and govern sensitive data across Microsoft 365, AI, and cloud environments, with deep expertise in financial services, healthcare, and defense. Before joining eShare, Ilya spent several years at Microsoft as a global black belt in security and compliance, following Microsoft's acquisition of Secure Islands, which became Microsoft Purview Information Protection. He later led data governance advisory practices at Epic, working closely with CISOs and compliance leaders to modernize legacy environments and meet evolving regulatory demands. Today, at eShare, he's helping organizations replace legacy security controls with data-centric guardrails that secure sensitive collaboration inside Microsoft 365, turning governance from a business inhibitor into a business accelerator. Ilya, welcome to the show.
Hey, Dr. KJ. Great to be here.
Hey, I appreciate you joining. And, with that said, let's just jump right into question 1, So when we think about your company and the security focus, can you start by telling our listeners about eShare and the unique security challenges you help customers solve? And what gaps and pain points do you see organizations facing when trying to secure their Microsoft environments?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, and it's a core problem that a lot of customers have, both the ones that I'm working with now as well as historically. As you mentioned before, I used to be at Microsoft as a global black belt for several years, and then I ran a practice around Microsoft data governance capabilities for several years after that. One of the things that kept coming up when I was working and advising my customers, CISOs, and others in the security organizations was how do you actually collaborate? And when I talk about collaborate, meaning modern collaboration, working on a single essence of a file with not just internal parties as we do today, right? Currently, inside Microsoft 365, all organizations, nobody's sending a file anymore. They're sending links. But when you go outside your environment, there are several challenges and barriers that come in the way. It could be things like core capabilities of Microsoft, the requirements for guest users. A lot of organizations have something called tenant restrictions, which blocks them from being able to access other 365 instances. All these challenges are in place because of core reasons that a lot of organizations wanted that level of security. And we could get into more details to how we solve that. But the core problem still exists. And what that creates as a paradigm is I either have to continue to email documents externally, going back and forth, which email is a great collaboration solution, but it's not really collaboration of files. If you really think about it, it's a poor man FTP. I sent you a file, you worked on it, you sent it back to me. And then we have multiple versions of the file. And in today's day and age, with AI coming into the world, having too many versions of a file, besides the fact that we're concerned with growth of data as a whole, creates things like hallucinations and other challenges within the organization around access control. How do you secure all these files and versions that you may need to have access to? So when I was at Epic running a practice around Microsoft security, I ran into these challenges with these customers, and I ended up running into Nick Stamos, our CEO and founder of eShare, and he told me about what the company does. And it was amazing because it was like a light bulb. Every single thing that was a challenge that our customers had, we were able to resolve and solve in a way that scales within the organization. Because one of the things that's very interesting, I actually heard CISO on another panel today talk about it. It's one thing to have a policy in place that looks good on paper. It's another thing to have an effective policy in place that can actually scale within your organization. And that's what eShare tries to do.
No, I love that. I think you really summed it up, right? Like you have to be able to scale with inside an organization. A policy is a policy, right? But if it doesn't work right or scale correctly, then it's not going to be effective. And so you think about the lines of businesses that you have to work in and different companies and like let's just take banking, for instance. I know there are 5 or 6 or different lines of businesses within those organizations, and it's a tough time trying to figure out who needs access, who has access, what to block, what to filter, and so forth. And so that's what I'm kind of hearing what eShare does is really kind of makes that simple for customers.
So eShare actually has two aspects of our solution. One is our eShare Collaborate platform, and another one is our eShare Govern platform. And I'll break down a little bit about both of those and how we actually help solve some of these core challenges of our customers. The initial problem that we were solving, which is eShare Collaborate, allows you to have link-based sharing with external parties from within your tenant without having to have a guest user. And we also alleviate the challenges of tenant restrictions. So let's start with the first problem of the guest user. With guest users, one of the challenges is securing that guest user and being able to have that B2B connection with an enterprise or B2C with consumers, depending on your customers, like your financial use case. That becomes a big challenge to manage the lifecycle of the guest users that are coming into your tenant, and also what access they have and granular access controls in order to provide the right guardrails for the users within your organization so they don't accidentally leak or overshare data that they shouldn't be sharing with the wrong individuals. So by being able to bridge identities, so meaning we're integrated with your IDP of choice for your internal users, and the external users can use things like OpenID, which is a standard protocol that most IDPs, including Microsoft and third-party solutions, can work as well. Or they could register within our SaaS application through a secure method in order to validate that their user identity is the right one. But that user never actually gets into your 365 tenant. We're bridging that identity. So we're able to control that plane, and that user only has access to those specific files that their users are actually sharing. On the flip side, the tenant restriction issue. So back in 2017, when I was at Microsoft, a lot of organizations, especially regulated ones, did not want to go into 365 because they were concerned of the sharing capability being, if I go to SharePoint and I create a link, it is company.sharepoint.com. And that was a lot of concern for organizations. So tenant restrictions say I can only get to 365 instances that are mine when I'm looking at SharePoint.com. We actually integrate with an organization's DNS. So if you were at company Contoso, as an example, right, instead of it saying contoso.sharepoint.com, we could have secure or some sort of prefix .contoso.com. So as long as I can get to your website, I'm actually going to be able to get to this trusted share. So by being able to do that and layering 35 controls on top of what Microsoft can provide and integrating with Microsoft Purview labels as well as DLP, we use those as signals to tell us what sort of data is in that file, and we can automate the policy they're going to be able to subscribe to. And what our concept is we actually act as a collaboration fabric, and fabric is really meaningful word there because it connects the organization in a unified way. So whether I'm sharing from OneDrive or SharePoint or Teams, or if I'm going to send an email out, I'm going to be able to contain that data within my ecosystem and apply the appropriate controls based on my data governance strategy that I put in place for within Microsoft already. And that allows me to take more advantage and a better ROI on the investments I've already made in my Microsoft ecosystem because my data stays there. It stays in a unified way. Other organizations and legacy way of sharing data is an enclave approach. I'm going to put my data into a third-party environment, not even my tenant, in order to collaborate with external people. That bifurcates your data, creates an extension of your security plane that you have to go protect. So that becomes a challenge for your security organization. And for your users, I'm also bifurcating my user experience. I'm working from a productivity perspective here with my internal colleagues, but as soon as I need to go work with my customer, client, or vendor, I need to go to a different solution. So by being able to provide a unified plane, and regardless of how I share, it's going to be a completely white labeled branded experience for both for the external parties. They're going to say, this is just an app that Contoso created for me. And for the internal users, it's a native experience because we're integrated in every aspect of Microsoft in order to be able to allow that sharing. So that's our Collaborate solution.
No, I love that, and I think you hit on some really key points. There is one, the security of this, right? And that's a great segue into what I wanted to talk to you about next. But I also want to throw in AI as well, right? So as a Microsoft partner here, you're working closely with technology stacks that are just different than most people have seen, right? But how are you seeing AI reshape both that threat landscape and the defense capabilities? And then what's your perspective on where AI powered security is actually delivering value versus where it's more promise than reality?
Yeah, those are really powerful questions. Let me start with the first one, and that'll also
Yeah.
lead me to kind of talk a little bit about eShare governance and how we solve for that.
Mm-hmm.
AI is an extremely powerful capability that's coming out to the world, right? Both the chat GPTs and co-pilots of the world, right? As well as the agentic capability and custom solutions that are going to be driving basically the innovations that are happening within our industries.
Right.
Citizen developers coming into play, things along those lines. The big challenge there is we have not done a good job as an industry at the basics. And what I mean by that, AI exposes, because of this capability, and if you think about it, some of AI is really just a super powerful search engine that can go
Mm-hmm.
find things that would be very difficult in the past. But we've done a very poor job of data governance for internally within our industries, right? We don't know what sensitive data we have and where it is. We've over permissioned it because it's too hard to really narrow down those permissions to the right level of folks without breaking business process. And in the past, we've been able to just sweep it under the rug because it hasn't been that big of a challenge. But especially with AI, and by the way, I argue it was a big challenge even before AI, but AI is really putting a focus and a red dot
Mm-hmm.
on it. It's really expanded the fact that not having a good data governance strategy creates a lot of risk for an organization. So one of the things that we've done working with both our defense industrial based customers as well as other regulated industry where they want to start using AI capabilities, but want to make sure that they're controlling their data properly, is leveraging both what is part of Microsoft already with your DSPM capabilities and labeling and DLP, but expanding on top of that in order to address, again, that ability at scale and solve those business problems. So we've
Right.
introduced the capability of scanning for both internal as well as when you share external, leveraging something called attribute-based authentication controls, or ABAC. So Microsoft has quite a bit of information around the context of a share, but not all of that information resides in the Microsoft 365 instance. It could be in a CSPM somewhere, right? Some sort of management solution. It could be a directory talking about what licenses employees have, such as your Series 7 or things along those lines. Do you have access to ITAR information on the defense side, right? Are you
Yeah.
part of the private wealth management group that's dealing with this high wealth individual? All that information doesn't exist in 365 itself, including in Entra. So you need to look at other sources. So with eShare, with our ABAC capabilities, we're able to look at these third-party sources and make real-time intelligent decisions for access controls based on content and context beyond what is just existing within the Microsoft 365 ecosystem. And that's really helped a lot of organizations accelerate their deployment of Purview and getting those controls, because now they can actually expand that to make them real controls, and active controls that actually work within the environment.
No, I mean that's great. And so outside of the threats that you named, do you see any other additional threats that are prevalent in your world that you can enlighten the listeners on?
Well, as far as other threats in the world, AI obviously brings a lot of that to the forefront. As I mentioned, access control, sprawl of resources, malware injection based on uncontrolled or insecure agents or applications that are created. So there's a lot of risk around governance of not just the data itself, which I argue,
Mhm.
again, that's the basics that we've ignored, and we really need to get and put that structure and foundation in place so we could build on top of
Right.
it. But then that same foundation and governance really needs to go into AI and how you're actually providing the right tools and education for if you're going to have citizen developers to use that properly, or a little bit more guardrails around how these capabilities are put into the market. And just as much as AI is creating some of these challenges, AI is also a potential fix for those challenges, right? So one of your questions, the second question you had when we started this part of our question is security in AI, right? So like
Right.
Security Copilot, for example, and other platforms have introduced that. I actually just saw an article the other day. Did Claude did Anthropic kill cybersecurity? You're smiling, so it seems like you've seen it too, where now it's fixing its own code for vulnerabilities. While I think that we're going to get to a point where AI will take care of a lot of that initial hygiene, the easy things to do, it's going to be quite some time before you can really be autonomous and make the appropriate decisions for the bank. Because when we're thinking about risk, there is technology risk, there's financial risk, there's people risk, there's communication risk, all kinds of different aspects. And a human brain can think about certain permutations, I think, at least a day, better than AI can. So that's one of the reasons why I love the way that Microsoft markets its AI capabilities as a co-pilot, because it's true, we're not ready for autonomous capabilities, both as from a technical perspective and as a people, I believe, as a whole. But having that ability to have that assistant to really take care of the nuances and the commodity work that we do, and let us be more ingenuitive as people. I think that's where we're going to get to, and that's true from a productivity perspective and from a security perspective.
No, I think the automation and the autonomous, is think about the EV industry and where they're going. You think, I'm not going to name the companies, but they're out there, right?
Yeah.
You know who the players are, and they are crowdsourcing all of that data, but they still have issues. And I think that comes to your point, right, Ilya, is you can have all the data, but you're not going to be perfect. There still needs to be an intervention there. And I think that's where you're going, is saying, hey, we're still going to be relevant. So for all the people that think AI is taking your job, it's not. It's just helping you enhance and think about some things before you actually go and implement changes or, you present information. So I think that's just a difference.
Absolutely. And one thing I'd say is, and for your listeners, you're right. It's not taking away jobs. It's creating different jobs. And while I wouldn't say, hey, run for the hills, go start digging ditches, we're not going to have jobs anymore, you do have to start thinking differently, and you should start thinking differently now, right? How can you use these tools to make yourself better and more a valued resource in the future, because you're not, someone else's.
Exactly. Yeah, they're going to be more millionaires now with AI than they have ever been in the world. So all good. So as we talk about AI and security and your company, eShare and just focusing on where you guys are going, the leadership in building that security culture. So in your role working with these diverse organizations, what really separates those security leaders who are successfully building those strong security cultures from those who struggle? And then what advice would you give someone trying to champion security initiatives within their environment?
Yeah. Appreciate that question. And it is certainly an important one for both existing and emerging leaders in those roles. I'd say in my mind, there are two things that really separate the successful leaders from the ones that struggle. One, we talked about already, making sure you have the right foundation. Get back to basics, right? You can't win a football game if you don't have a line that's driving. And you need to make sure that you have those things in place so that you can build on top of that foundation. Otherwise, you're building a house of sticks and it's just going to fall. The other thing I would say that's really where I see the most successful leaders on all sides is partnership. And what I mean by that is, if we go back to the 10, 15 years ago, the CISO role was thought of as the office of no, right? I want to do that. I want to go to the cloud. No. I want to use this tool. No, right? And obviously that had to change because the safest computer that's out there is one that's unplugged, but you're not really doing anything with it. So it's important to be able to have that ability to figure out not how to say no, but how to partner with your business users and your business leaders to understand what is driving that business and how do you secure those workflows as opposed to diverting them to other workflows. So that kind of comes back to where I feel eShare really provides that ability to join and create that partnership. Because if you think about typical legacy governance solutions, they're creating roadblocks for you to share. Think about legacy DLP. I can allow or block this transaction from happening. There needs to be an ability to create that gradient, that ability to meet the business where it actually works in their flow of work, and yet still create the guardrails in order to secure them in the appropriate way and secure the business as a whole. And by being able to create that proper governance, as opposed to slowing the business down, it can actually accelerate it because now you can actually use those fun new tools that are really going to drive innovation like AI. If you have that foundation in place, you have that partnership in place, you can figure out how to use that and accelerate the business in a faster way than doing it alone.
No, I agree. And so, Ilya, I would ask, what's one final thought you would want to leave the listeners with?
Come back to, again, start with your foundation, but don't ever forget about the innovation you want to provide. Think about the North Star. This is true, by the way, when you start thinking about how to even code your own AI application. I started playing with some coding applications myself. And when you need to think about it, you think about it as a system. What is the end result you want? And then create the appropriate flows of work in order to get to that North Star. If you don't have that North Star, all you're doing is grinding. You really need to have that vision, and that vision will lead you to where it needs to be. Like they said, if you build it, they will come.
I agree wholeheartedly. No, Ilya, this has been amazing. I truly appreciate you jumping on and having this conversation with me. And I look forward to having you back on in the future. And best of luck to eShare in what you do for all of our customers out there. Seriously, we thank you and appreciate the partnership.
It's been my absolute pleasure and always a good time being with Dr. KJ. So,
all right, my friend. Thank you.
Bye.
And that's a wrap on today's conversation with Ilya Pozharsky. From the challenge of securing external collaboration inside Microsoft 365 to the critical role of data governance in an AI-driven world, Ilya brought deep expertise and real-world perspective to every topic we covered. His reminder to get back to basics, build the right foundation, and partner with the business rather than block it is advice every security leader can take with them. And that North Star mindset, knowing where you're going before you start building, that's something we can all apply. If you want to learn more about how eShare is helping organizations secure collaboration without slowing the business down, check them out at eShare.com. As always, thank you for listening to Secured with Dr. KJ, securing tomorrow, one episode at a time.